Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell walked alone down a narrow Istanbul alleyway at 11 p.m. Her civilian clothes, jeans, leather jacket, simple t-shirt, making her look like just another American tourist who'd taken a wrong turn in the old city. The four men who'd been following her for the past 3 blocks moved in with practiced coordination, blocking both ends of the alley with professional precision, 2 in front, 2 behind, all armed with pistols visible under their jackets, all thinking this would be easy money. The kidnapping crew specialized in high-value targets: wealthy tourists, business executives, people whose families would pay ransoms quickly and quietly. They saw a lone woman, mid-30s, athletic but not imposing, carrying an expensive camera and designer bag. They saw a payday. What they didn't see was the Navy SEAL insignia tattooed on her left shoulder blade, hidden under her jacket. They didn't know about the 12 years of special warfare training, the 4 combat deployments, the hand-to-hand combat instructor certifications. They didn't know that cornering Sarah Mitchell wasn't capturing prey. It was stepping into a trap set by an apex predator who'd been hunting them for 3 days. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, because what happened in the next 90 seconds would be taught at SEAL team training facilities as a perfect example of why underestimating your opponent based on appearance is the last mistake some people ever make. The alley was typical Istanbul: narrow cobblestones, slick with recent rain, old Ottoman-era walls rising 3 stories on either side, clotheslines strung between buildings, dim yellow streetlight at one end barely penetrating the darkness. The smell of kebab from nearby restaurants mixed with city dampness and old stone. Normal sounds of nighttime Istanbul, distant traffic, occasional voices, music from cafes, created ambient noise that would mask whatever was about to happen. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell was 34 years old, Navy SEAL, one of the first women to complete BUDS training and join the special warfare community. 5'8" athletic build that came from swimming miles daily and carrying heavy equipment through hostile territory. Dark brown hair currently pulled back in a ponytail, hazel eyes that tracked everything with practiced awareness, olive complexion that helped her blend in throughout the Middle East. She moved with casual confidence that most people mistook for tourist naivety, but was actually the controlled relaxation of someone who'd operated in much more dangerous places than Istanbul alleyways. Her mission was technically classified, but straightforward. Identify and track a human trafficking network operating in Istanbul, gather intelligence on their methods and leadership, build a case for Turkish authorities to take down the entire organization. Standard counter-trafficking operation, the kind SEALs occasionally ran in cooperation with local law enforcement. Sarah had been working undercover for 3 days, deliberately presenting herself as an obvious target: expensive clothes, high-end camera, staying in luxury hotels, walking alone at night, waiting for the traffickers to make their move. And now they had. The 4 men blocking the alley were professionals, not street-level thugs. Clean clothes, modern weapons, tactical awareness. The 2 in front moved with military bearing. Probably former Turkish special forces who'd switched to private sector work. The 2 behind were younger, possibly still active military moonlighting for extra money. All 4 carried Glock 19 pistols in shoulder holsters under their jackets, visible to trained eyes like Sarah's. The leader, tall, maybe 6'2", heavily built, dark beard, early 40s, stepped forward from the front group, his partner flanking right. Behind Sarah, she heard the other 2 moving closer, blocking her retreat. Standard kidnapping box formation: contain the target, minimize escape routes, overwhelming force to discourage resistance. The leader spoke in accented English. "Miss, you are in wrong part of city. Not safe for American tourists alone at night. You come with us. We take you somewhere safe." Sarah let her face show appropriate fear and confusion, her body language shifting to appear smaller, more vulnerable. Classic prey response that would make them overconfident. I think I'm lost. I was trying to get back to my hotel." Yes, we help you." The leader smiled, not friendly. "But first you give us camera, bag, phone. Insurance that you cooperate, understand?" Behind her, one of the younger men was already reaching for her shoulder, his partner moving to grab her arms. The leader's partner had his hand inside his jacket, ready to draw his weapon if she resisted. Standard procedure: secure the target, disarm and control them, move them to a vehicle, transport to secure location for ransom negotiation. They'd probably done this dozens of times. Grab a tourist, hold them for 24 to 48 hours, contact family for $50,000 to $100,000, release them with a warning to stay quiet. Low risk, high reward crime in a city with millions of visitors. But Sarah Mitchell wasn't a tourist. The moment the man behind her made contact with her shoulder, Sarah moved. Her response was so fast, so explosive, so completely unexpected that the traffickers' brains couldn't process what was happening until it was already over. Years of muscle memory and combat training compressed into a 3-second sequence of controlled violence. Sarah's left hand shot up and grabbed the wrist of the man touching her shoulder, her thumb finding the pressure point that would make his grip useless. Simultaneously, her right elbow drove backward into his solar plexus with the full force of her body rotation, not a defensive push, but a combat strike designed to incapacitate. The impact drove the air from his lungs and sent him stumbling backward, gasping. Before the first man even registered the pain, Sarah had already spun left, using his captured wrist as a pivot point, and drove her right palm heel into the second man's nose. A precise strike that shattered cartilage and brought instant tears, disorienting him. She swept his legs with her right foot, a classic judo technique executed with perfect timing, sending him crashing to the cobblestones hard enough that his head bounced off stone. 2 down in 3 seconds. The leader and his partner were reacting now, training kicking in, hands going for their weapons. But Sarah was already moving toward them, closing distance before they could draw, using aggressive forward pressure to disrupt their OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. She'd learned in combat that the person who forces the other to react is the person who controls the fight. The leader got his Glock halfway out of his holster before Sarah's front kick, a devastating straight kick powered by her hips and entire leg, caught him in the chest and sent him flying backward into the alley wall. The impact was hard enough that the Glock clattered to the ground, and he slid down the wall, stunned. His partner had better reflexes. He'd drawn his weapon and was bringing it up to aim when Sarah closed the final meter between them. She trapped his gun hand with her left hand, controlling the weapon's direction. First rule of disarming: control where the gun points, and drove her right knee into his groin with full force. As he folded forward from the impact, she used a classic disarming technique, twisting his wrist against the joint's natural movement, and the Glock fell into her waiting hand. She now had his gun. The entire sequence, from first contact to her holding the weapon, had taken maybe 8 seconds. Sarah stepped back, the Glock now trained on the 4 men with professional steadiness. The 2 younger ones were still down, one clutching his stomach trying to breathe, one dazed from hitting his head on cobblestones. The leader was against the wall trying to clear his vision. The partner was on his knees holding his groin, face pale with pain. "Nobody moves," Sarah said, her voice completely calm, no adrenaline shake, no fear, just flat command authority. "Hands where I can see them. Now." The leader looked up at her, and for the first time, real fear crossed his face. Whatever he'd expected when they'd boxed in a lone American woman, it wasn't this. It wasn't being disarmed and dominated in less than 10 seconds by someone who moved like a professional fighter. Who are you?" he managed to say in English. "I'm the woman you just tried to kidnap." Sarah kept the Glock steady, her stance professional, feet shoulder width, both hands on the weapon, finger outside the trigger guard until she needed to shoot. "I'm also a United States Navy SEAL, and you're under surveillance by Turkish National Police, who've been building a case against your trafficking network for 3 months. Congratulations, you just gave them probable cause for arrest." On cue, the alley filled with blue lights and the sound of boots on cobblestones. Turkish police officers, at least a dozen, flooded in from both ends of the alley, weapons drawn, shouting commands in Turkish. Sarah immediately raised her hands, the Glock visible but not threatening, showing she wasn't a threat to the police. A Turkish plainclothes officer, Captain Aydin Yilmaz, mid-40s, 20 years in counterterrorism, approached with a slight smile. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, excellent work as always. These are the men." These are 4 of them, Captain. The primary leadership is still at the warehouse on the European side, exactly where we tracked them yesterday. You'll want to move on that location within the next 2 hours before they realize this team didn't report in. Captain Yilmaz nodded to his officers, who began handcuffing the 4 traffickers, reading them their rights in Turkish. The leader was still staring at Sarah with something like shock, trying to process how badly he'd misread the situation. You were bait, he said slowly. This whole time, you wanted us to take you. I needed you to commit to the crime so Turkish authorities would have grounds for arrest, Sarah confirmed. Your organization has kidnapped 17 tourists in the past 6 months, including 3 Americans. You've collected over $2 million in ransoms. That ends tonight. But the mission wasn't over. As the police led the 4 men away, Captain Yilmaz turned to Sarah with a more serious expression. The warehouse raid happens in 90 minutes. We'd like you there as an observer if you're willing. Your intelligence made this operation possible. I'll be there, Sarah confirmed. An hour and a half later, Sarah stood in a tactical operations center overlooking the Bosphorus, watching multiple video feeds from police assault teams positioning around a large warehouse in the Ayıp district. The building was registered as a textile import business, but was actually the headquarters of one of Istanbul's most sophisticated human trafficking networks. 15 targets inside, the tactical commander briefed the room. Armed guards, network leadership, and possibly hostages. We go in with overwhelming force, secure all exits, detain everyone for interrogation. Sarah studied the building layout on the tactical display. Something felt wrong. The guard positions were too obvious, too predictable. The leadership wouldn't be this careless about security. Captain Yilmaz, she said quietly, this feels like another layer. Your primary targets, the network leadership, they're not in there. This is another buffer between you and them. Yilmaz frowned. Our intelligence says, your intelligence is what they wanted you to have. The 4 men in the alley gave up too easily. The warehouse location was too convenient. This is a cutout. Important enough to seem like a victory, not important enough to actually damage their operation. Then where's the real leadership? Sarah pulled up additional surveillance photos on her phone, images she'd taken over the past 3 days of shadowing the organization. Here. This yacht moored at the Bebek Marina. I tracked 3 of your primary targets boarding it yesterday. They've been living on the water, mobile, ready to leave Turkish waters at any moment if law enforcement got too close. Yilmaz studied the photos, then made a decision. Team 1 hits the warehouse as planned. We still want everyone inside. Team 2, with me and Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, we're going to the marina. 20 minutes later, Sarah was in the back of an unmarked police van with a tactical team heading toward the upscale Bebek neighborhood where luxury yachts lined the marina. She'd changed into tactical gear, black fatigues, plate carrier, but no weapons since she was officially an observer, not an operator, on Turkish soil. The yacht was a 50-meter luxury vessel registered to a shell company in Malta, a floating mansion worth millions, with enough range to reach international waters quickly. Perfect for criminals who needed mobility and luxury. 3 guards on deck, probably more inside, the Turkish tactical team leader whispered, watching through night vision from a concealed position on the dock. How do you want to play this? Captain Yilmaz looked at Sarah. You've done this before, Lieutenant Commander. How would your team approach? Sarah studied the yacht's configuration. 2 deck guards visible at the stern, 1 at the bow, lights on in the main salon indicating people awake inside. Fast rope from helicopter would be best, but that's probably too loud for a marina at midnight. I'd suggest a water approach. Swim team comes up on the far side away from the dock, climbs aboard simultaneously at 3 points, secures the guards silently, then breaches the main salon with flashbangs in overwhelming force. Total time from water to control, 90 seconds. We don't have a trained dive team on immediate standby, Yilmaz admitted. Then we do it the loud way. Cordon the marina to prevent escape. Approach with lights and sirens to force them to make a choice, surrender or run, and intercept either way. Less elegant, but effective. Yilmaz nodded. The loud way. Everyone in position in 5 minutes. But plans changed when one of the guards on the yacht suddenly pulled out a phone, talked briefly, then ran inside the main salon. Moments later, the yacht's engines roared to life. "They're running!" the tactical commander shouted. "They know we're here!" The yacht was already pulling away from the dock, its powerful engines churning white water, heading toward the Bosphorus Channel and the open sea beyond. In international waters, Turkish law enforcement would have limited authority. "Harbor Patrol!" Yilmaz was shouting into his radio. "Intercept yacht Maltese Falcon departing Beylik Marina. Suspect vessel fleeing arrest." But the nearest police boat was 10 minutes away, and the yacht would be in the Strait's heavy traffic by then, using civilian vessels as cover. Sarah made a split-second decision. She sprinted down the dock toward a cigarette boat, a sleek racing vessel, moored 3 slips away. "Captain, I need this boat. That's private property. Bill the U.S. government." Sarah was already dropping into the boat, checking the controls. The keys were in the ignition. Wealthy boat owners in secure marinas often left them there. The engine started with a throaty roar. Yilmaz understood immediately. "Team 2, with Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. Go! Go!" 4 Turkish tactical officers jumped into the cigarette boat as Sarah slammed the throttle forward. The racing vessel exploded across the water, its powerful engine throwing a massive wake, quickly building speed to 40 knots. Ahead, the yacht was maybe 300 meters away, churning toward the Bosphorus's main shipping channel. "Can you catch them?" one of the Turkish officers shouted over the engine noise and wind. Sarah's smile was fierce. "This boat tops out at 70 knots. They're doing maybe 30. Yeah, I can catch them." The cigarette boat closed the distance rapidly, the gap shrinking as Sarah pushed the throttle to maximum. The boat was flying across the water now, bouncing over its own wake, spray flying. The Turkish officers hung on grimly, weapons ready but unable to aim in the violent motion. At 100 meters, muzzle flashes erupted from the yacht's stern. The guards were firing at them with pistols, rounds snapping overhead or splashing into the water nearby. Not accurate fire from a moving platform at a moving target, but dangerous nonetheless. "Get down!" Sarah shouted, steering the cigarette boat in a serpentine pattern to make them harder to hit, while still maintaining pursuit. "We're going to come alongside. When I match speed, you board." "You're going to what?" one officer shouted. "Board them. It's a maritime interdiction. Trust me, I've done this before." Sarah had in fact done this before, several times in anti-piracy operations off Somalia, where Navy SEALs would approach hostile vessels at high speed and board them before pirates could harm hostages. The technique was terrifying and effective in equal measure. She brought the cigarette boat alongside the yacht's starboard side, matching speed. Both vessels now doing 30 knots through Istanbul's harbor, dangerously close to civilian boat traffic. The yacht's captain tried to veer away, but Sarah matched every movement, staying glued to their flank. Now. Board now. The Turkish tactical officers, to their credit, didn't hesitate. They grabbed onto the yacht's lower rail and hauled themselves up and over, weapons ready, disappearing onto the deck. Sarah heard shouts, then gunfire. 3 quick shots. Then silence. Then one of the Turkish officers appeared at the rail, giving her a thumbs up. "We have control. Yacht is secured." Sarah throttled back, her heart pounding from adrenaline, and followed the yacht as it slowed, and Turkish officers took control of the helm. Within minutes, police boats surrounded them, and the luxury yacht, with its criminal leadership still aboard, was being escorted back to the marina under arrest. The debriefing happened at dawn in a Turkish National Police conference room overlooking the Bosphorus. Sarah sat with Captain Yilmaz, the tactical team leaders, and representatives from the U.S. Embassy, going through every detail of the operation. The warehouse raid yielded 12 arrests and evidence of 17 kidnappings, Yilmaz reported. The yacht raid gave us the network's leadership, 5 high-value targets, financial records, communication logs, everything we need to dismantle their entire operation across Turkey and into Europe. "Outstanding work, Captain," the U.S. Embassy representative said. "And Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, your intelligence and tactical support made this possible. The Turkish government has expressed their gratitude." Sarah nodded tiredly. She'd been awake for nearly 40 hours, had been in 2 physical altercations in a high-speed boat chase, and just wanted a shower and 12 hours of sleep. "There's one more thing," Yilmaz said with a slight smile. "The 4 men from the alley. They're cooperating fully with our investigation now. I asked them what changed their minds." He pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a video, security camera footage from the alley, showing Sarah's 3-second takedown of the first 2 attackers in perfect clarity. "We showed them this video," Yilmaz continued, and explained that they'd attempted to kidnap a U.S. Navy SEAL. One of them said, and I'm quoting, "We thought she was easy target. We were wrong about everything." Sarah smiled slightly. "That's the idea, Captain. People who judge opponents by appearance instead of capability tend to learn expensive lessons." "The lesson has been learned," Yilmaz agreed, "and hopefully your country's State Department will share this case study with other counter-trafficking units. Show them how effective it can be to let the criminals think they have an easy target, then spring the trap." "It works," Sarah confirmed, "as long as you're absolutely certain the bait can handle themselves if things go wrong." "And you can," Yilmaz observed. "That was impressive combat efficiency in the alley. I've worked with special forces from many countries. You'd fit in with any of them." "That's the job, Captain. Be good enough that gender doesn't matter. Be professional enough that you're judged on capability, not appearance." 3 days later, Sarah was back in the United States at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado in San Diego, debriefing her own command on the Istanbul operation. The conference room held her SEAL team commander, representatives from Naval Special Warfare Command, and an intelligence officer taking notes. 17 hostages recovered safely, 19 arrests across the trafficking network, complete disruption of their operations in Turkey, her commander summarized. "Excellent work, Lieutenant Commander. The Turkish government has formally thanked the U.S. Navy for your assistance." "Thank you, sir." "There's video of the alley incident circulating among special operations units," the intelligence officer added with a grin. "Specifically the part where you dropped 4 armed men in less than 10 seconds. It's becoming a training case study for threat assessment and hand-to-hand combat." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I'd prefer that video didn't become public." "It won't. It's classified training material now. But within the special operations community, you're developing a reputation." The commander leaned forward. "The incident raises an interesting tactical question, though. When you walked into that alley alone, you knew you were outnumbered 4-1, all of them armed. What was your confidence based on? Training, experience, arrogance?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. "All 3, sir, but mostly training. I've spent 12 years learning hand-to-hand combat, close quarters battle, threat neutralization under stress. I've trained with Army Rangers, Marine Force Recon, Delta Force, and SEAL instructors. I've deployed to combat zones 4 times. I knew that if I moved first, moved fast, and used their assumptions against them, their assumption that I was vulnerable, that I'd be scared, that I wouldn't fight back, I could control the engagement before they realized what was happening. And if you'd been wrong, then Turkish police were in position to intervene within seconds, sir. It wasn't reckless. It was calculated risk with backup plans." The commander nodded. "That's the distinction between a good operator and a reckless one. You knew your capabilities, knew the risks, had contingencies. That's why you're sitting here debriefing instead of in a hospital or worse." He closed the folder on his desk. "You're being put in for a Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for your actions in Istanbul. The citation will be classified, but the medal is real. Good work, Lieutenant Commander." Dismissed. 2 weeks later, Sarah was in the SEAL training compound at Coronado, teaching a hand-to-hand combat class to a group of new SEALs fresh out of BUD/S. The students, all male, all in their early 20s, all thinking they were tough after surviving 6 months of the world's hardest military training, stood in formation watching as she walked onto the mat. Some of them were trying not to smile. A few exchanged glances. Sarah knew what they were thinking. She'd seen it 100 times. They saw a woman, 5'8", maybe 160 pounds, and thought this was going to be an easy class. Thought they'd humor her, go easy on her, not hurt the nice lady instructor. They were about to learn the same lesson the Istanbul traffickers had learned. This class, Sarah began, is about threat assessment and response in close-quarters combat. By the end of this hour, you're going to learn 3 things. First, how to assess a threat based on capability, not appearance. Second, how to respond to multiple attackers with superior positioning and technique. Third, why underestimating an opponent is often the last mistake you make in a real fight. She pointed at the largest student, 6'3", maybe 230 pounds, muscles built from years of weight training and buds hell. You, on the mat, you're going to try to grab me and put me in a control hold. Use full force. Don't hold back. The student hesitated. Ma'am, I don't want to hurt. You won't, Sarah interrupted, and don't call me ma'am. I work for a living. It's Lieutenant Commander or Instructor Mitchell. Now get on the mat and try to grab me. The student stepped onto the mat, still hesitant, still thinking he needed to be careful with the small female instructor. He reached out to grab her shoulder. Sarah's response was explosive. She trapped his arm, stepped inside his reach, threw him over her hip using his own forward momentum, and had him on the mat in an armbar before his brain processed what happened. The entire sequence took maybe 2 seconds. That, Sarah said calmly, still holding the armbar, is what happens when you underestimate an opponent based on size and gender. You telegraphed your intent, you moved slowly because you were worried about hurting me, and you left yourself completely open to a counter. In a real fight, that gets you killed. She released him and helped him up. But good effort. You're going to do that drill 20 more times until you stop holding back. The rest of the class went very quietly after that, the students' attitudes shifting from barely concealed condescension to focused respect. By the end of the hour, Sarah had thrown, armbarred, choked out, or otherwise submitted every single student at least once, usually within seconds of them engaging. As they filed out, sore and humbled, one student approached her. Lieutenant Commander, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How did you get so good at this? I mean, I just finished BUD/S. I've been training for years, and you just destroyed all of us like it was nothing. Sarah smiled slightly. I didn't destroy you. I demonstrated superior technique and used your assumptions against you. You all assumed that because I'm smaller and female, I'd be easier to handle. That assumption made you careless, made you hold back, gave me openings. In Istanbul 2 weeks ago, 4 armed men made the same assumption when they tried to kidnap me. They learned the same lesson you just learned. You really took down 4 armed men? I did. And you know why? Not because I'm stronger or faster, because I trained harder, prepared better, and never assumed that looking like an easy target meant being an easy target. She gestured at the training compound around them. That's the whole point of this place. To take people and make them so good at their job that conventional assumptions don't apply anymore. You're not a normal person anymore. You're a SEAL. Start acting like it means something. The student nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Yes, Lieutenant Commander. Thank you. That evening, Sarah sat on the beach near Coronado, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, thinking about the past few weeks. Istanbul had been successful. Traffickers arrested, hostages recovered, a dangerous network disrupted. The alley confrontation had gone exactly as planned. The boat chase had been improvised but effective. Everything had worked out. But she also thought about the assumptions people made. The traffickers who'd assumed a lone woman was easy prey. The new SEALs who'd assumed a female instructor would be gentle. The countless people over 12 years who'd looked at her and made judgments based on appearance instead of capability. Being a woman in the SEALs meant constantly fighting those assumptions, meant proving yourself again and again and again to new teams, new commands, new missions. It was exhausting, but it was also what made her better. Every challenge overcome, every doubter proven wrong, every mission accomplished built competence and confidence that couldn't be faked. Her phone buzzed, a message from Captain Yilmaz in Istanbul. Thought you'd want to know, the trafficking network is completely dismantled. 7 more arrests today based on evidence from the yacht. You helped save lives, Lieutenant Commander. Thank you. Sarah smiled and replied, That's the job, Captain. Glad we could help. She put the phone away and watched the sun disappear into the ocean, the sky turning orange and purple. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new people who'd underestimate her based on appearance, and she'd handle them the same way she'd handled everything else, with training, preparation, and the absolute confidence that came from being one of the most dangerous people alive, regardless of what assumptions others might make. The traffickers in Istanbul had learned that lesson in an alley at midnight. The new SEALs had learned it on a training mat. Eventually, everyone learned it. Cornering Sarah Mitchell wasn't catching prey. It was stepping into a trap set by an apex predator. And that was always a mistake. 6 months later, Sarah received a letter from one of the hostages rescued in the Istanbul operation, a 23-year-old college student from California who'd been held for ransom for 3 days. The letter was simple but profound. I never got to thank you personally. The Turkish police told me that an American Navy SEAL helped rescue me. They showed me the video of what you did to those men in the alley. I've watched it 100 times, not because of the violence, but because of what it represents. You walked into danger alone to save people like me. You faced 4 armed men and didn't hesitate. You proved that courage isn't about size or gender. It's about training, dedication, and refusing to accept that anyone is helpless. I'm joining the Navy next month. I want to be like you. Thank you for showing me what's possible. Sarah folded the letter carefully and put it in her desk drawer with the others. Dozens of letters over the years from people she'd helped, directly or indirectly. This was why she did the job. Not for medals or recognition, but for the moments when someone realized they were stronger than they thought, when victims became survivors, when assumptions shattered and truth emerged. The sun had set completely now, stars beginning to appear over the Pacific. Sarah stood, brushed sand from her pants, and walked back toward the base. Tomorrow would bring another training session, another group of students who needed to learn that appearances deceive, that capability matters more than assumptions, and that the quiet professional sitting across from you might be the most dangerous person in the room. That was the SEAL way. Quiet competence, humble confidence, and when necessary, overwhelming violence delivered with precision and purpose. The traffickers in Istanbul had learned it the hard way, and they'd never forget. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.